Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dharma Digs podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. I'm your host, Taylor Winchester, and as always, I am forever grateful that you've chosen to spend just a little bit of your time here with me digesting this podcast. So thank you for being here. Today's episode is another solo dig, and I've kind of, it feels vulnerable to be talking about some of these things today. So I hope you'll bear with me if I stumble in any of my words. And hopefully this sparks a little bit of, contemplative nature within yourself, because I feel like this is something that we probably oftentimes think about to ourselves, but don't always feel that we can talk about these things in public and to other people, because as the old adage goes, the two things that we don't talk about are politics and religion. And today I'm not talking about politics, but I am talking a little bit about religion. So I hope that you'll bear with me in this and maybe find a few nuggets of value and really make you think about some things, because for me, religion has been kind of an interesting concept throughout my time here. Growing up in the Southeast, many of you who are listeners are probably located in and around the Southeast right now. But if you haven't, or if you aren't here in the Southeast, then you probably should know that, the religion in and of itself is a very big deal here in this kind of what we call the Bible Belt. So I grew up not necessarily going to church every day, every week, but I did grow up in an area that was heavily religious, and being the Bible Belt and, the Southern Baptist and Christianity was just really all we knew in our region, at least all I knew as a young buck, I'll say. And I didn't really have any qualms with it until I got a little bit older and started to kind of connect the dots on certain things. And I still don't really have a lot of issues with those that consider themselves devout Christians, because I think that my understanding, at least, and I have limited knowledge from the standpoint of like really recently being heavily in tune with the Bible and all of the scriptures and really like the gospel, as we'll say. So I don't want to come across as like saying I don't think that any religion is right or wrong, because that's not really my point here. But what I would like to share is how my recent practice of the last year of really diving deeper into the meditation practice and the self-contemplations and the search for self, it's led me back to some of those religious roots in some ways, and really more so from a spiritual aspect and a spiritual approach. And I found a lot of value in that, and not necessarily to say that, again, that I'm this devout religious practitioner by any means, but I think the whole purpose and really the whole point behind worshiping any type of God or the religion that you kind of say you're going to live your life by, it comes down to actually putting those lessons and the material into action. And that's where I struggle a little bit. I think, let's go back a little bit. So when I was young, I attended this annual summer camp. I mean, I went every year for I think at least 4 or 5 years in a row, and a lot of my friends went. And that camp was known as Camp Lorecrest, and it's in near Lake Lure, North Carolina, which is in the western region, kind of in the right as you're starting to get into the Appalachian Mountains. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I went more so back then from the perspective of desire, I guess you would say, was really because it was a social thing. I mean, all of my friends were going, and we had a big group, and there was a competitive nature about the camp in a sense. You went, and your cabin that you stayed in was your team essentially for the week. And of course there were morning and night services. This is a Christian camp, mind you. So there's a lot of, it was built around worship, but at the same point in time, you have to engage youth and you have to engage kids and kind of keep them entertained with other aspects, I guess you could say. So there was this whole social component to it that really is what brought, I think, the fun of it about. And, the worship part was interesting. I think at that age, again, it was really more social than it was really from a standpoint of a growth towards God, as they would like to, I guess, kind of introduce youth to a path to worshiping God. And in this case, it's a Christianity path. And there was a lot of fun and a lot of good things that came out of that. But as I got a little bit older, that was probably in middle school, maybe late elementary, middle school range. So preteen age range. But as I got a little bit older, I think the thing that I struggled with from a standpoint of the whole Christian approach to things is that it seemed that I knew, or I would have conversations with many folks that, that would go to church every Sunday and worshiped in this Christian approach. But then when you hear certain things that they say and you see certain actions that they take in their life, don't always add up to what the Bible preaches, I guess. And I don't pretend to know the Bible and through or in and out or any of that. I mean, I know some of the lessons, and it's been many years since I've really read into the Bible or read a lot of those scriptures. But I feel like a lot of folks that grew up here in the States and people that are my age and folks that I've talked to recently, really even, we have this like aversion to religion and specifically to Christianity or to this worshiping of this singular being that we call God. And that's where I've kind of started exploring this concept a little bit. And for me, for a while, I would say that I didn't believe in God. But what I would say is I believe in a higher power, and that being you could call it magic, you can call it spirit, you can call it the cosmos. I think there are many different ways that one might describe this higher being. But the thing I struggle with was like putting this physical feature or physical attachment to a being that looked like me or looked like us, and that's who we worship. And in addition to that, some things that came along with that I felt like were a little bit not hypocritical, but it was really this thing that I struggle with was this fear of God. And I don't understand why we would worship or why we would put all of our trust and faith in this God that's going to potentially like shun you or send you down to this horrible place called hell. And that's what I struggle with a little bit. So I know there's probably a lot of depth to and details within the conversation or within this concept and approach within Christianity that I'm probably missing because I haven't really read the Bible or I don't go to, a traditional church in the weekly sense. So, if any of you out there listening are very strong in your faith as a Christian worshiper, please, by all means, reach out. I'm not trying to offend anybody, and I'm open to the conversation, and I would love to hear feedback and thoughts from other perspectives here, because this is where I think we need to move in that direction of more conversations and being able to be open about these things. So again, I'll say I'm being a little vulnerable in this because I certainly, the last thing I want to do is to offend anybody, and that's not my intention here. So getting back on topic, I will say, I think the thing that I have come to realize here recently is that there have been these signs that make me start to question or remember and reevaluate my kind of spiritual or religious thoughts, right, and my beliefs. And one of those signs was, this was several weeks ago now, and I was at Barnes & Noble. I was swinging by to pick up, actually, I was going by, and many of you have heard me talk about Ram Dass. I'm a big fan of his teachings, and I was picking up his memoir at Barnes & Noble's. This is a month or two back now. And I was sitting there reading, the book is located in the religion section, right? And so I'm looking through all these different other books that are there, and it was kind of in this Eastern philosophy and religion, and then right beside it is more Western religion, and I'm kind of lost in my own thought as I'm perusing these books and flipping through, and there's a lady to the right of me, a decent distance away. We are practicing social distance here at that point, but she's thumbing through books too, and then she asked me, and she was of some type of Asian descent, and you could obviously not to, I don't know the term, but not to like judge, but just saying, I mean, physically you could tell that was her, where she came from, and then even in her dialect was obviously she had something there that was a little bit broken English for me to try and understand. And so all of a sudden she said, "Excuse me, what version of the Bible do you read?" And it kind of caught me off guard because it seemed a little forward to just assume that I or anybody that happens to be in a bookstore is just a reader of the Bible. And granted, to give her the benefit of the doubt, I am over in this kind of philosophy and religion section, so perhaps that gave her the green light on asking that question. But it caught me by surprise, and I said, well, to be honest with you, I haven't read the Bible in quite some years, and I don't have a version that I read. And she said, you really should. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but perhaps you should also read some stuff that isn't strictly the Bible, because she had said that she reads a new version of the Bible every year. And I just, at first I found myself getting a little defensive, but and I think that comes from past conversations. But fast forward now, what I'm realizing is that all of these conversations that I've had in the past that kind of entangle around this concept of religion, and perhaps my aversion to it, or kind of resistance to it, is that these are threads within my life that are part of my path in my journey to explore, right? And so that caught me off guard, and I've been thinking about that interaction quite frequently lately. And then it was only maybe 2-3 weeks, I guess it was probably 3 or 4 weeks after that, I'm out one Sunday afternoon working in the garden, and my phone rings, and it's a local Charlotte number. And I answer the phone, and she quickly says, "Hey, this is not a solicitation. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm doing my service on Sunday, and I'm calling other local Charlotteans to read them a verse out of the Bible." And she read me, and I don't have the full quote or full verse in front of me, but I wrote it down because, again, this was another, what I feel is another sign, and it was Romans 15 verse 4. So you can go research that. I should have probably pulled that for this, but I didn't. And so anyways, that's another thing that's just kind of wrapped me back into like this consideration within my mind about religion and my maybe resistance to it, but also more so the desire to find some sense of purpose within the world and what we're even here for. All of these things kind of start to go together, and it's led me thinking more and more about it. So that's what we're talking about today. And I just wanted to share, because I feel like I do believe that this is something that we don't necessarily talk about enough, or at least share with others, because we're so resistant to maybe stepping on anybody's toes or offending anybody, or just talking about a topic that seems like it could be hard to talk about. And so I've moved more so into the reconsiderations for myself and my approach to these things. And I think what I'm finding is that the struggle that I have with religion, and at least my understanding of religion and my limited experience, is that specifically with Christianity, and even there's probably a similarity in other religions too, is this kind of right or wrong, one way or no way type approach to it, or this winning or losing. And that's where I struggle, because my perspective on life is that we are all a part of this oneness that is the universe, and we need to do our part and act accordingly within the sense of being a good steward of taking care of not only ourselves but our fellow human being and all those things. And I've been exploring a little bit more of the Hinduism approach, and I've kind of stumbled into that after reading more Ram Dass stuff. My exploration here recently within the meditation curriculum that I'm going through is really, it was founded by the Vedic Vedas back in which all took place in northern India back 4,000 years ago or something now. And so a lot of that documentation, I think, actually came around like between 500 and 1200 BCE, but it's just all interesting that the path of the meditation approach that I'm going for, which is this primordial sound mantra-based meditation practice, has led me now into more of a reconsideration of religion and spirituality and how, and my approach and how that impacts my life. And so with all of that, after diving into the meditation stuff and the Ram Dass stuff, this has led me to this recent book that I'm reading now, which is actually the Bhagavad Gita. And if you're watching here on YouTube with me, you can see me holding this book up. This book was actually, this one is introduced and translated by Eknath Eswaran. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing his name properly, but I'll post links to all this stuff in the show notes. And I picked this book up because actually, coincidentally, a fellow musician friend of mine, Alex Christie, happened to share on her Facebook feed a week or so back about this book and the impact it's had for her as she's finished up her yoga teacher training. And so it was interesting because I was also, at the same time, I picked up another Ram Dass book that really is, I think it's called Path to God, and it's basically Ram Dass's kind of guide to working your way through the Bhagavad Gita, and really not just reading it as a book, but really applying it into your day-to-day life. And the thing that has intrigued me about all of this is that really what I'm finding as I'm researching Hinduism versus a Christianity or Islam or some of these other religion approaches is that Hinduism is referred to more as a way of life or a family of religions as opposed to a single or singular organized religion. And it embraces many religious ideas. And that to me is more powerful than trying to, shout that my religion is the only religion and the only way. And that's where I think I get hung up on in some of these other forms of worship. And so as I'm finding this, I'll go back to talking a little bit about the meditation, because the meditation is what's led me down this path of rediscovery of my own approach to religion, my own approach to spirituality, and kind of what that means to me and why it's important in my life, particularly recently with my exploration of purpose and what our Dharma is, or what my Dharma is, and why we're here. And that is a question that is hard to answer for any of us. And I think the exploration of that it helps to evaluate that, but it also helps to bring about a little bit more clarity. And it has for me, and meditation has been the tool and the steward for all of that. And so going back to the Bhagavad Gita and Hinduism, what I'm, most intrigued by here is that with that in conjunction with the primordial sound meditation approach is that they aren't privy only to a certain religion. So you don't have to practice or believe in a certain religion. And actually, regardless of what practice of religion you might partake in, the mantra-based meditation approach is valuable regardless. And it can pair with any of those religious approaches. And I've shared this quote previously, I think on this podcast even, but I think I've read it in the Deepak Chopra and the organization as I'm doing my curriculum, but there's a saying that basically says, prayer is when you are speaking to God, but meditation is when you are quieting everything else down and you're listening to the divine. And that is something that has become a very critical and crucial part of my practice, is realizing that when we quiet our minds down and try to get to this level of a pure consciousness, it allows for our true inner self to really start to recognize that divinity within our own selves, so that we can then act in the same nature of God, or in the same nature of this God presence. And that's my approach to it. Is, again, when I say God, I'm not talking about this singular being that I think a lot of us have a natural kind of thought pattern on, but it's really more of this grandiose energy that is ever in ever constant change and flux around us. And it's something that I think as someone who has struggled with religion, I'm becoming more and more at peace with my place in all of this. And it feels good. It feels like I am in harmony with cosmic law. It feels like I am on the right path, and that path is discovering and opening up really more of a sense of rediscovery or relearning at a soul level. And so there was another book that was really important in this whole journey that I often come back to as well, and that book is called Conversations with God. And it's a trilogy written by Neil Donald Walsh, and I actually read the first book, what year would that have been? Maybe 2008? 2008 going into 2009, and it was a really pivotal time in my life. And again, that book is a different approach to this relationship that we have in this human form with a God-like or God being. And I would highly recommend it because it really pushes the concept of, God is this ever-loving creature, and not even creature, I don't even know how to say it, but it's this presence of energy and love, and that is essentially what God is. It's not a being that we have to get down and worship. It is literally all of us are a part of it. It's the trees that we see in our backyard. It's the flowers that bloom every spring. It is literally everything around us. And so when I start to think about that concept, I start to kind of compare that with the Christianity approach. I compare that with the Hindu approach and start to parse these things down to my own religion or my own belief system. What I really value in all of that is that we can find the divinity within ourselves and how we're interconnected within everything else in this world. And that is a crucial part of, I believe, a crucial part of becoming more at peace with the whole process that we're on here in life form. And so I don't know that I have any really big takeaways from this episode, as much as I would just say I'd love to explore the conversation if anybody wants to. I'm more than happy to share more of kind of my feelings on this if anybody wants to engage in that conversation. And I plan to, moving forward, actually start to dig into this Bhagavad Gita a little bit more and share with you as I do, because I think that this will be a large part of my reevaluation of religion and spirituality and the importance that it brings in my life. And hopefully it will encourage you to explore those concepts within your own mind and your own practice, your own day-to-day. One other thing I would say before I let you guys go today, there's a lyric that I wrote in a song, and when I write songs, more times than not, I don't sit down with a specific topic and say, I'm going to write about this today. It's just more times than not when I try that, sometimes it works, but what I feel are kind of the most profound or most kind of emotionally evoking songs that I write when I look back on them are really ones that just kind of come from that creative nature. And if there's anything that I've learned through this meditation process, as we quiet ourselves down and try to find that level of pure consciousness, it opens up so much more creativity because we realize that our limiting beliefs don't have to be there. So this line though is from the song Choice it's a single that I released back in 2020, and I'm working on some more music and finally getting back into that routine. But the lyric is basically, life's not about winning. It's about setting your mind free. And when I think about Christianity and my beef with Christianity, and really not just Christianity, but of any of these religions that, start to kind of promote the concept that it's my way or no way, or my way or the highway, or if you don't worship in this way, then you're going to hell, or whatever it is. The problem that I have with a lot of that is that it almost promotes competition, which breeds this separateness and, right versus wrong, me versus you, winner versus loser. And that line, I didn't notice it or didn't recognize the importance that it would have in my life when I wrote the song. But when I start to reevaluate and all of these things start to come back up, I realize a lot of times, actually, when I look back at my songs now, I'm like, wow, that's why that came out of me, is because of this path that I'm on, and my purpose within life is, it's not me, it's coming through me. It's this greater sense of universal God, if you will, that is coming through me. And I don't say that to like pat myself on the back as much as I say it's this common thread that I find running through my life that keeps coming back up, but in a different perspective as I have grown more wise and have explored more and really lately quieted my mind down to really consider these things more regularly. So I say all that to then say that I think the importance here for me is to really find an approach to life and to your spirituality, your belief system, but don't just believe it because somebody else has told you this is the way. Believe it because it's the way that you believe you should be living your life. And that's what I'm learning through the different styles of yoga and the worship from a spiritual context here, specifically within the Hindu approach and the Vedic wisdom of yoga, is that it's one thing to say you believe something, but if you don't take proper action and integrate your choices, the decisions you make, and all of these actions that we take on a day-to-day, even our thought patterns, if we don't utilize those in an intentional manner that also vibe in conjunction with this religious approach or belief system that we have, then what are we even doing and why do we even believe it? So I challenge you as a takeaway, I'll come up with this on the fly here. I challenge you to, think about your experience with religion. Think about how religion has played a role in your life and the faith that you have. And do you put all of your faith in this divine thing that is way over here out of reach that you don't feel like you actually can touch or see or feel, but it's this being thing? Or can you put your faith in the cosmic energy and the cosmic law of the universe to say that we all come together as one and we all are interrelated on this planet Earth, and maybe your religion needs to integrate into that belief system as well. I don't know. I'm not telling you how to believe or what to believe, but the more that I meditate on it, the more that I quiet my mind down to step away and use all of these different thoughts that have come throughout the years to then just quiet everything down and get to the soul level and find that true inner heart love and let that be the guiding light. It's led me to realize that life is not about winning. It's not about being the winner. It's about setting our minds free from the constant struggles that we have and making choices and decisions and actions that not only better our own scenario and our own existence, but all of those things around us. All of those things around us. So I'll leave you with that. I'm sending love, light, and just this lightness of being, of an intention out to you all. And I'm very grateful that you've chosen to spend a few minutes of time with me here today. So thank you again for stopping by. I will say one quick shout out one quick note. If you are based here in the Charlotte, North Carolina region like I am, I actually have an upcoming live show. A solo show in Matthews, North Carolina. It's really more of a gig than a show. You don't have to pay to get in or anything. It's going to be on the patio of the Carolina Beer Temple right in downtown Matthews, North Carolina. That's April 10th. If you 4 o'clock in the afternoon, hopefully we'll have beautiful weather, beautiful spring weather here in Charlotte. So if you're around, come join me. That's on my website as well as on my socials. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast. If you want to get into this conversation a little bit more, hit me up. I'm actually working on some new meditation offerings and some new kind of group offerings. So anyways, thank you so much everybody for being here. I love and light to you all. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Namaste.